Silver medal syndrome is a phrase that's been coined to describe the feeling of disappointment that people get when compared to those who get third place or bronze. The idea is that if you get second place, you're more likely to focus on how close you were to getting first place, rather than if you get third place, you're more likely just going to be happy that you placed at all. Second place can be a disappointing, frustrating, and even forgettable experience, and oftentimes you're then forced to really focus on every little thing that you did and figure out a brand new technique in order to get you into first place next time. And one brand who has had to time and time again sit with the dissatisfaction of second place is Pepsi. That's pretty good, actually. In the world of soda, Coke is getting gold, and for most of its existence, Pepsi has been considered second best. But not for lack of trying. In its history of rebrands and world building, Pepsi's tried a lot. But one thing they've tried that's a little unusual compared to other food brands is Pepsi actually created its own doll line. So for today, we are going to be diving into the history of Pepsi, soda doll collaborations, and the Pepsi GenerationNext Doll line. Move over, I'm next. Move over, I'm next. Sorry for the interruption, but we would just like to say... You look so uncomfortable. I would just like to say a quick thank you to Sedeta for providing the desk I am editing this video at and filmed it at. A few months ago, Sedeta actually reached out to me about sending me one of their desks, and I got to pick from their very wide selection of different designs. All of these desks are ones that you can build yourself, which is my favorite thing when it comes to furniture, and they sent one my way. I put it all together. I loved it. And then, as many of you know, my apartment complex had a fire, and unfortunately a lot of my furniture ended up being damaged from that, including the desk from Sedeta. Thankfully, I was able to get a replacement in a slightly different style. So I have now tried 2 different desks from them, and I love both. They have just such a great variety in styles. The current setup I have, I adore. There's a shelf that my PC and my printer fit on perfectly, as well as some really great display shelves. And you all know I have a lot of stuff to display. So I wanted to say a thank you to them for not only sending a desk my way, but also being really patient with me, because this video is supposed to come out 2 months ago, and obviously some life stuff happened that made that a little hard, and they've been very patient with me, which I appreciate. So if you all are interested in getting a new desk, I'm gonna put a link to their website and their Amazon storefront in the description down below. So thank you all for listening to my spiel, and let's get back into the video. Pepsi was invented in 1893 by Caleb Branham in New Bern, North Carolina, with the goal of creating an appealing fountain drink which would aid in digestion and boost energy. The drink was originally called Brad's Drink, which just is a great name. Why would they change that? But it was renamed to Pepsi Cola in 1898 because it was specifically being advertised to help with dyspepsia. I don't know what that is. What is I think it's just indigestion. Dyspepsia is chronic indigestion. Could be a symptom of GERD. Shout out to my GERD girlies. Okay. While Pepsi has a huge history of advertising, one key point comes in 1934, when the company doubled the size of a bottle of Pepsi but kept the price the same. So they were able to advertise that you would get double the Pepsi for the same amount as a bottle of Coke, which during the Great Depression was a pretty good deal. And yes, even that far back, the Pepsi-Coke beef existed. It basically was there from day one. But key to what we are going to be talking about today, in 1963, the Pepsi Generation advertising campaign began. That year, Pepsi would hold a slogan contest, with the winner getting a new car. And the slogan, "Come alive, you're the Pepsi generation," was the winner. This led into a marketing campaign which was really focused around appealing to the youth of the time, saying that Pepsi was for young, active people.
Who is the Pepsi generation? Just about everyone with the young view of things.
Which contrasted heavily with Coke, who had oftentimes used looking back on good old times and nostalgia in its marketing. While they would use that Pepsi generation kind of concept for some time, another kind of notable or key moment in the history of Pepsi is, of course, the Pepsi Challenge. In 1975, Pepsi held blind taste tests in shopping centers and malls, where consumers would try a Pepsi and a Coke without knowing which is which. And consumers tended to like Pepsi more.
Pepsi. 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 I like Pepsi a lot better.
Which was a huge advertising and marketing boom for them to be able to say. However, this test has now been heavily criticized for how it was ran, with some people saying that because they only were trying one sip, it's not quite accurate, and people tended to pick Coke if they got to have like more than one sip, essentially. However, the results of the Pepsi Challenge scared Coca-Cola enough that they made a whole new type of Coca-Cola called New Coke.
New horizons! New Coke! Think about it.
Which consumers then hated, and they had to go back to the old formula because New Coke was so unpopular.
Somebody out there tell me why Coke did it. Why they changed. Now I know why.
I just think that that's a fun little bit of history, not super related. So Coke and Pepsi continue their fight, and in 1985, Pepsi decided it was time to bring back the generation branding. This was through the Choice of a New Generation campaign, which were a line of commercials that featured Michael Jackson, Tina Turner, and David Bowie in them to highlight that those young, hip artists all preferred Pepsi as their beverage of choice. And then in 1997, it was time for the next generation. This would be the GenerationNext marketing campaign, whose commercials featured the Spice Girls, as well as Britney Spears, the most iconic Pepsi drinker in my mind.
My favorite kind of Pepsi? Pepsi's Pepsi.
And even had 4 minutes of airtime during the Super Bowl, which remember at that point, a lot more people were watching the Super Bowl because you had less options for how you watch things. That was a big deal. I saw just so many news articles that were highlighting the fact that Pepsi had 4 minutes of commercial time. 4! That's crazy! With each era of branding that the company would go to, merchandise always would play a role. I feel like especially in the 90s, it was a great time for putting a brand logo on a piece of clothing or a journey or a bag and selling it to people. And Generation Next had a fair amount of clothing and products made for it. But one piece of merchandise that I personally had never really expected to see from a soda company was a doll line.
You're in the Pepsi generation.
Now, don't get me wrong. Two industries that I know value profit over, say, product quality, consumer well-being, and environmental and employee health are the toy industry and the soda industry. So of course, they've actually collaborated a number of times in the past. Both Pepsi and Cola are no strangers to putting their logo on the body of a doll. In fact, Barbie was actually originally Team Pepsi. In 1974, outfits featuring the Pepsi logo were created for Barbie, Skipper, Francie, and Ken. This line of clothing would, interestingly enough, be one of the first brand collabs Barbie would ever do, second only to American airline uniforms made for the dolls in the 60s. While Pepsi had their head start in the 70s with the Barbie collab, in the 80s, Coke was ready to take things into their own hands and actually created their own line of dolls. The first ones they made were a Barbie clone made by BBI Toys. These came in a ton of different looks, including acrobatic outfits, sportswear, Hawaiian look, and casual. I believe all these dolls essentially looked the same appearance and hair-wise. They're all white. However, I will say, I do really like the packaging. I love the rainbow branding. It's really cute. This line would also come with a lot of outfit packs, including the Stonewash one, activewear, casual wear, some boy outfits, and accessories. BBI would also make a Coke kids line of toys, which is a great name. And these feature like chubby little kid dolls and some outfit packs as well. While I don't have too much information about BBI or Big Box International, they would also create a line of toys called Bear It in Mind with bears who had different careers, which I love. That is fantastic. While Coke was making its own dolls, Pepsi would once again have another collaboration with Mattel in 1989 with the Pepsi Spirit line of dolls. This line would include Barbie and Skipper wearing Pepsi-branded clothing and including some red and blue beachwear. It seems like, however, this line was originally supposed to be a lot bigger. In an Instagram post from a Pepsi collector, ProtoGuy69, they shared a quote from the supposed designer of the dolls, who said, "Here's the interesting story about the Pepsi dolls. I don't remember exactly what happened, but my friend who was the marketing person at the time reminded me. In 1989, Mattel partnered with Toys R Us to make exclusive Pepsi Barbie and Skipper dolls only sold at Toys R Us. They were called Pepsi Spirit Barbie and Skipper. They sold well, and Toys R Us had Mattel create more Pepsi Spirit Barbie dolls with Ken and all the friends, which I designed. They were submitted to Toys R Us, and before going into production, Toys R Us decided to cut Mattel out of the deal, and they launched some dolls they called GenerationNext Pepsi dolls, which were knockoffs of Barbie. So the Pepsi Spirit dolls we have here were never put into production, and they're one-of-a-kind prototype dolls and outfits. The outfits all have hand-cut-out labels and logos." So this post does not include the designer's name, and so we're gonna have to take all of it with a grain of salt in general, but it is really interesting to get to hear a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff and get to see some of those prototype dolls as well. Moving back to Coke, they would once again release another line of Coke dolls in 1993, these ones being made by the Ertl Company, or ERTL. But in 1996, for some reason, the tides would change, and Barbie would decide that Coke was now her beverage of choice, with Mattel releasing a number of different sort of historic styled Barbies in collaboration with Coca-Cola. And Pepsi was once again playing second fiddle. Apparently the aurora is visible right now, but I need to film this, so we are not gonna get to see the beauty of nature. But it seems like Coca-Cola and Mattel's relationship actually started a lot earlier in that, with a news article from November of 1990 highlighting that Mattel and Coca-Cola were going to have a $700 million marketing campaign together for the holiday season. This was a Christmas promotional campaign where coupons would be found on specific Coca-Cola products, which could be exchanged for toy money or discounts on Mattel toys. So at some point between 1989 and 1990, it's likely that the ties between Pepsi and Mattel were severed. I think a likely situation was that Coke and Mattel were really considered to be the giants of their industries, and one of them must have come up to the other and gone, "Hey, I got a great idea." Mattel had already done a similar coupon campaign in the past, but palling up with Coca-Cola really would put their coupons in front of more people. I think with Coca-Cola's kind of powerhouse of having really popular wintertime marketing, and of course, toy sales being a huge thing in the wintertime, the companies were like, we will win. This is great. As far as I know, how it worked out is Coca-Cola basically did all of the advertising and paid for all the advertising, which again, they do in the wintertime anyways. And then Mattel covered the cost of the coupons, which I'm assuming they made a lot of money through this, so it probably was fine. And really, it likely pushed more consumers to be specifically buying Coke products if they were already going to buy soda anyways, because then they would get a discount on their Christmas present shopping. So with what the possible designer was saying before, I'm sure the Pepsi Spirit dolls did sell really well, but the reason why the collaboration ended more likely had to do with marketing deal rather than anything Toys R Us was doing to cut corners. Like, maybe? But maybe Mattel backed away and then Toys R Us went, let's go in a different direction, which is also kind of confusing because Toys R Us is just a retailer and wasn't creating the dolls. Maybe it had to do with the specific collaboration they had. I don't know. But before we talk more about that and Generation Next, let's just have a quick shout out of some other soda dolls of the past. And Pepsi's got a lot to give. Now I do want to say there have been a lot of Barbie Coca-Cola collaboration dolls. Here are some of them, but I'm more thinking about specifically soda-themed dolls. So in the 1960s, we'd have the S. Rosenberg Company Soda Fizz Kids, which were small dolls that were inside soda bottles, and depending on what year they were made and what year Cola Kitties by Mattel were made, one of them inspired the other, likely. I believe Cola Kitties were from 1968, and they were a part of Mattel's Liddle Kiddle line of dolls, which first were made in 1966. I think in general, the Liddle Kiddle dolls are pretty fun. They have big heads and little bodies, and they came packed in really interesting ways, like in perfume bottles and soda and necklaces, and I think oftentimes they were scented, and children love scented plastic. Then, there wasn't really a lot, excluding the Coca-Cola dolls and collaborations that we've talked about in between, but in 2006, we'd have Yummi Land Soda Pop Girls, which were a line of dolls created by MGA that were released from 2006 through 2008. These dolls would typically include themselves, a hairbrush, an animal, and a lip gloss, which was the flavor of the doll's character itself, which the doll was also usually scented as. More smelly plastic. The lines of Yummyland dolls included the original 6 dolls, as well as cream soda dolls, Sundae Pop, Candy Pop, Flower Pop, Smoothie Pop, Ice Cream Pop, Pets, Snow Cone Pop, a soda shop, bubble van, dress designing, and necklace making playset. Well, I love the theming on these. I love that they're packaged in soda bottles. I feel like I clearly remember seeing them on the shelves. I doubt I would have liked that they were scented. Again, I feel like scented stuff, especially scented toys, end up being really like strong smelling and kind of sickly. And I didn't love it. And I'm assuming a lot of consumers didn't because the brand would disappear. But then reappear in 2024. MGA would revive the line, though with dolls that look very different to how they did in the past, but these ones would still have their iconic lip glosses with them. And while it's not specifically soda theme, in 2001, the Britney Spears doll line would actually release 3 dolls where she's wearing the outfits that Britney wore for her commercials. I did not realize how many Britney Spears dolls exist. Guys, there are so many Britney Spears dolls. They're everywhere. But speaking of Pepsi, in 1990, Mattel had broken that long-standing partnership with the brand, and Pepsi had to follow in Coke's lead in the past and work with a smaller company to create their own line of dolls. In 1997, at the beginning of the Generation Next campaign, Pepsi would release a line of dolls in stores across America. Well, at least one store. These were specifically sold, I believe, at Toys R Us, so they might have been an exclusive deal with the company, and I'm not really sure how widely distributed they were or how many of them they actually made. The Pepsi GenerationNext line of dolls were distributed and likely made by the company FunSource. Now, I don't have a lot of information about FunSource by itself, but it was a division of Stratton International Inc., which by itself has been a very successful company. Founded in 1983, Stratton International has had a focus on making safe, affordable, and high-quality toys. Today, they work in collaboration with brands like Marvel, SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo, and Disney, and they also create the toys for Wendy's and Taco Bell kids' meals. I can't find any other doll lines made specifically under the Stratton International branding, so it's possible that FunSource was a short-lived division of the company which was created essentially just to make doll lines in collaboration with other companies. For example, the Hey Macarena doll, which included a tape so you could listen to the Macarena while making your doll dance to it. They also continued that idea with this Island Princess Hula doll. FunSource would also reissue the Cupcake dolls in 1998 after the line was dropped by Kenner in 1992. Doll companies are so weird, guys. They're just, oh, we're not gonna make this anymore. You can. Okay. What? But other than those, I can't really find any other dolls that the company produced, other than our Pepsi GenerationNext girlies. The Pepsi line consisted of 3 dolls, tie-dye outfit, black walking outfit, and beach party. Woo! Each of these dolls was designed to fit into a sort of like brand and identity that Pepsi thought would be really hip and kind of fit in with what was cool with the young generation, the young Pepsi generation. I'm getting brain blasted remembering the song I Generation, which goes, hey, you're part of it, talking about the I Generation. And that's just what I think about with Pepsi now. That wasn't their song. They didn't, not related at all. Each of the dolls had their own kind of, not really like poem, but message on them that shared these ideas that Pepsi had. So the tie-dye doll states, my philosophy on life is love it. At school, my friends and I are totally slammin'. We are in all the coolest classes and hang out with the top of the line. We're even honor students. Way cool. In Council Club, my generation helps our community whenever we are needed. We do everything, from assisting senior citizens to raising money for charities. For fun, we cruise them all and look for wow. Sometimes we rage at the clubs with the latest dances. I am kind, helpful, and an achiever. I make a difference. So together, let's make the world a special place. That's why we're Generation Next. TM. It just has such strong, hello, fellow youth energy. Like, to be fair, I was alive then. I was 1 year old when this came out. So maybe this aligned with the 12-year-olds of the time. But it's feeling really cheesy to 29-year-old adult as me. Oh god. It looks like it's possible this retailed for $9.99, which would be about $20.28 today, and I found a clearance price for it being $5, so more around $10, $12. They weren't crazy expensive. Some of her key features. She has super long blonde hair, like crazy long hair. Kind of ridiculously long. It very much is giving they got the heads and did not cut the hair energy. So she has like a little nice red cardigan on her waist. She has the tie-dye shirt. She's wearing khakis. She comes with a pair of boots as well as a kind of cute messenger bag that does say Generation Next on it. And she should have a Pepsi bottle. Mine is sadly fallen down to the side. But I do think she's pretty cute. She has a really intense smile. Like, you can see her bottom teeth. She got a big smile for you. The black walking outfit doll has the following message. My philosophy on life is, it's a journey. Just got back from a power walk. Wow, what a rush. Adrenaline is awesome. When I relax, I always enjoy a cool, refreshing Pepsi. Exercise gives me time to think about my future and the dreams I have for myself, like traveling to exotic faraway places. That's why I'm studying to become an astronaut. I'll be so mass. What is that? What is so mass? I'm totally into the environment and aware of the earth. That's why my generation recycles. I am confident, considerate, and accomplished. I make a difference. So together, let's start on the adventure of a lifetime. That's why we're Generation Next. So this doll is wearing her hair down, and she also has a bag and soda bottle. Kind of similar energy. I love the juxtaposition of her being like, I love to work out and then enjoy a refreshing Pepsi. My sport drink, my pre-workout of choice, and post-workout, apparently. And then lastly, we have the Mega Beach Party Doll set, which there's so many trinkets in this one. So this one says, it's a totally amazing day, so me and my friends are packing the wheels and heading for some rays and waves, so jump on in. We just need to mellow out and chill, so we're heading for Sanctuary, the beach. We've brought along all the cool party accessories and a wow time. Check out the windsurfer. Work that surf. I'm always careful to make sure I use ample sunscreen. Shout out to that. And if the heat's blazing, under the umbrella I go. The cooler's packed with our favorite libation, Pepsi. Gotta have it. Libation? Who says that? And the Barbie smokin' with Fab Eats. The guys are really into that game of beach ball. Hey, watch it. The sun has started to make its way out of here, so my generation's purging our area and sorting out the recyclables, taking extra care that marine life won't be harmed by our visit. I make a difference. So together, let's care about each other. That's why we're Generation Next. I believe this one was retailing for $14.99, so that would be around $30.44 today. Which, as much as I love that she comes with so many trinkets, they just look so cheap. They really do. So all three of these dolls have been advertised as being posable, but they don't actually have elbow or knee articulation as far as I can tell. And while it's not really possible for me to know what Pepsi had in mind in terms of the longevity with this line of dolls, they don't exist out of these three that were released, and many of these seem to have gone on clearance. Like, usually if I'm finding listings of them, they have some sort of like clearance sticker on them, so I don't think they were like falling off the shelves. I don't think people wanted these. And speaking on the commentary from, again, the possible doll designer from before, they seem to imply that these dolls were the reason that the Pepsi Spirit line of Barbies died, which, again, we know is probably not the case. It's probably the Mattel shifting their marketing alliance. I think it's pretty unlikely that this line of dolls had much to do with the original line, other than maybe Pepsi being like, oh, we made dolls before that did well. We could do that again without Barbie. Foolish things people have said. Sorry, I have to pat the cat. Now that my hand's over here. So these dolls came out 8 years after the Pepsi Spirit line of dolls. They have, I'm assuming, completely different outfits than what were planned for Pepsi Spirit. So I just don't think they're actually that related, other than Pepsi going, well, we could still do that. We could still make something. I don't also know how involved Toys R Us would be in it. Again, the designer seems to really heavily imply that like Toys R Us was having a lot of like product development decision power. And I would just find that surprising, because I would more so think Mattel and Pepsi would be the ones making those decisions, but I am not a part of the toy industry. So if somebody has insight on that they would like to share, you're very welcome to. I always do like to include a like, why this failed segment to my videos, but for this one I feel like it's kind of obvious, and just like, they're kind of shitty soda dolls. I don't think they were designed to be the next hit thing in dolls. In my opinion, I think it's kind of crazy for anyone during the 90s to be making a like Barbie-like or Barbie clone doll that doesn't have any sort of niche or gimmick attached to it to sell it, because kids are just gonna buy Barbies. Barbies were around the same price as this, so unless you have a kid that like really loves Pepsi, there's no reason for them to buy this. Just buy a Barbie and then buy Pepsi and drink it. Cheers. The 90s in general, I think, is an interesting time period, not only for dolls, but also in terms of like diet culture getting kind of crazy and interesting. And you have things like the Atkins diet getting really popular, while also the United States reaching its peak in soda consumption in 1998. So we had like a lot of people drinking soda, but then also this like crazy diet culture that was happening. So I just have a feeling that parents weren't really like, yeah, I'm gonna buy my kid this soda branded doll. Again, I don't see it happening. And the overall, like, vibes of the brand really trying to capture the, like, hip and youth thing, I think that could have worked for teenagers, kind of, but it does feel very artificial. And again, I wasn't there. I don't know how people communicated. Maybe you were taking libations with your pals around the Barbie. I don't know, but I just think it's very hello fellow kids. And them also trying to put environmental messaging in it is a little cringy. It's like, you guys are the problem and you're not changing anything to help the problem. You're just like, yeah, let's relate to the youth that do care about this. Like, it's the most hello fellow kids thing I feel like I've seen a doll brand do ever before, and it is cringy. So the irony of all of this is this soda-themed doll really is like the junk food of the toy industry. It might have pretty colors and some fun ideas, but at the end of the day, it's lower quality and kind of emptier than you would ever want it to be.
Next wave.
So thank you all for coming on this little adventure in soda and dolls. If there are some other soda-themed dolls that you know of that I didn't include, please let me know. And it was kind of hard to research to find the soda dolls, so, or if you have a favorite like Coca-Cola collaboration doll. I'd really been wanting to get a Coke Barbie to like have in the background or have in my collection, but all the ones near me when I was shopping were very expensive. Also, welcome to the new filming setup in my new apartment. If you for some reason haven't heard, because I feel like I've said it a lot everywhere, but I know not everybody is everywhere on every platform. My old apartment The unit above mine caught on fire while I was in my apartment. Very scary, very sad. Had to move. Had to move a few times. So I'm kind of settled again in a new place. This is the first thing I filmed in here, so hopefully everything went okay. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all are having a great autumn, fall. Stay warm, stay cozy, enjoy a delightful beveragino, libation, as the kids say. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and we will see you all next time. Bye! I have Coke. Pepsi. Everywhere now. First video in the new apartment.